it was fantastic to see that film. I didn't know we were going to see that film about forestry, because my journey into ecosystem service thinking and this kind of championing the value of nature beyond just the sort of instrumentaries was prompted by experiences in Papua New Guinea, where I was working for the government. A government of a very resource-rich country that managed to bankrupt itself because of corruption, basically, called in the IMF and the World Bank to resolve the problem. We were sort of scratching around to see where the foreign exchange was going to come from to solve the problem. And the head of the mission said to me, he said, "Have you ever flown across PNG?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "What do you see?" He said, "You see lots of forests." He said, "Well, there's your foreign exchange." And he was dumbstruck by my ignorance for not realizing this. I was just dumbstruck by a mindset that could look down on primitive, historic, century-old forests and just see it in terms of foreign exchange. And so that led me, when I came back to the UK, to start thinking about how to make those arguments. And how brilliant it would have been to have David Attenborough sitting beside me at that time trying to answer those questions. But my sort of looking at this has coincided with all these big initiatives, monumental bits of research to emphasise the point that nature has value. So we had the MA, we had the TEEB, in the UK we had the National Ecosystem Assessment. And it's all, to me, providing real evidence that these things exist, that we have to do an awful lot more about them to try to capture that value. So I'm very much in this camp. But I've probably been quite gung-ho in my support of this, and through my experiences there have been several pitfalls that have concerned lots of people, particularly in the environmental and in the conservation sector, which I want to sort of highlight now as 4 issues or pitfalls we have to avoid. The first is, using instrumental values undermines people who take a different perspective and think of nature in terms of the intrinsic value of nature, or has recourse to moral arguments. A lot of conservationists get into it because they love nature, they're not into it because they think of the people. And you foreclose any discussion about utilitarian value if you just say it's a moral imperative to do this stuff. Well, if you do that, fine, but you should have, I mean, I don't like the notion of intrinsic value. I'm not a moral philosopher, in economics I don't think it exists. But there is an idea that that's somehow a more noble cause to appeal to than this sort of mucky utilitarian economic reason for saving stuff. The second issue, which I think is much more serious, is that if you start dealing with public goods by saying we have to pay for these things, you may undermine people's intrinsic value for doing things. So I believe in the common good, and I believe in environmental stewardship, and that people have a duty of care for nature. I also believe in polluters paying for the externalities they cause. The converse of that is that people who provide beneficial services, shouldn't they get paid for them? We have to start paying for them. The people who do it anyway start not doing it. Blood, donating blood is an example. We had a unit from the RSPB, I give blood. What if they wanted to get their numbers up by starting to offer a tenner for other people to come along? But I still go and give my blood freely if other people are getting paid for it. And I've got rare blood, so I might actually want small than other people are getting. So there are real sort of issues there when you talk about paying agro-environment scheme farmers. So will sort of the extrinsic returns undermine intrinsic values people have for delivering? 2 other quick problems, issues, pitfalls to avoid. One is that we talk about nature, which I love. It's much better than any of the sort of scientific terms which people can debate forever. But biodiversity is not the equivalent of ecosystem service delivery. I work on a reserve in Bedfordshire. We're restoring lowland heath. If you go there in September, it's a fantastic, beautiful place. We're restoring the biodiversity, but to do that, you've got to chop down the timber. In a cost-benefit sense, is the biodiversity we're delivering of greater value than the carbon value of the timber restored there? Probably not. Last issue is that, for me, a lot of this economic thinking, the people who really need to be motivated, like the people in the Treasury and sort of hard-nosed economic thinkers, they're interested more in the sort of detail, the sort of ecosystem services that are about life support, life-enhancing stuff, avoiding climate change, carbon, water quality, those kind of things, the functional stuff that nature does. They get that because it's essential to our life. They're not so keen on the fluffy, life-enhancing stuff, and that's kind of what the RSPB delivers, the existence value of nature. The other motivations we have wanted to protect it. Studies generally suggest that those kind of fluffy values are actually the most important ones. They're the hardest for economists to get a handle on. So when you have low experience goods like that, if you talk about what do you value, how do you value the extinction of the species, it's just for some people beyond economic reckoning. So 4 problems, 4 issues we have to deal with. I still think we should be going down this route. 1 provocation. We know that whenever we have an economic crisis, we have a kind of paradigm shift in economics. So in the 30s, you have the Depression, then you have Keynesianism, then you have stagflation in the 70s, you have militarism, neoliberalism, whatever. We're facing a huge economic crisis. If we get out of the Euro the euro crisis intact, what's going to be the next economic paradigm shift? Is it going to be the kind of zero growth, the kind of ecological macroeconomics, or is it going to be more of this team stuff? So for me, this stuff is about tinkering. It's about re-establishing sustainable development. We have Rio next year, more opportunity for big things to come along. To re-embed that, and then maybe look at this as a thinking. So, should we be thinking about reform, or do we need a revolution? Do we need something much bigger than that? Do we need to sort of move into a new paradigm? Me, I'm a bit timid, so I kind of go with the reform stuff. But,